Hi everyone, this is Sonali. Thank you all for joining us for the fourth session of the FRO Virtual Summit, which is on how to build a multi-million dollar enterprise and then sell it. I would now like to introduce our esteemed panelists for this session. Mr. Suraj Malik, he is the partner of M&A at Video India LLP, and Mr. Ashutosh Chatia, who is the managing director of Emirates Holdings Private Limited. A very warm welcome to both of you, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So if you can just take forward with the session, Mr. Suraj and Mr. Ashutosh.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to get a chance to interact with all of you. And, we are going to talk in the next 30, 40 minutes on some very important aspects, right from building a business to how do we unlock the value of the business that we are building, we preserve it. And finally, while doing business is a goal and it takes our time, effort, but how do you eventually plan for a successful exit if you've given a business your lifetime and if you've given it all that you and your family has got. So trying to cover a large gamut of things in the next 30 minutes, and we'll keep enough time for Q&A. And between me and Ashutosh, both of us come with Ashutosh comes from a real business background and a great experience on exit planning, and I come from a consulting M&A, and a succession planning background. So we'll open the house to Q&A. Now, one of the themes that Franchise India decided that, why is it important and why people should know is what is a USP? And this diagram really says it all if you allow it to sink, you just think it with your eyes, watch it once. But really, the market is where you are there, your competition is there, and of course, a customer has to be there. And where all three circles are intertwined, where all three coexist, that's the real market, and that is fiercely competitive. That is difficult. Doing business is challenging, but at the same time, it's a great fun as well when you're able to crack it. Now, what a USP really is and what you really need to think about while operating in market, and don't be afraid of competition. Competition will be there. Competition is a sign that you are in a space that is meaningful enough for even others to come and others to participate and reap the benefits of it, and there is a real customer. What is important to have a lot of introspection, a lot of focus, is the gap where there is a customer need which your competition is not fulfilling, and that essentially the gap which you are able to creatively fulfill is your USP. And this is the only thing that will set you apart. This is the only thing which what we call as a winning difference for any business to say that I understand, I'm aware of what my USP, and I'm going to keep building on it so that I am doing something better what my competition is doing, and I'm meeting my customer needs. So it will be a win-win for you, your customer, and generally everyone in the ecosystem. It also sometimes is very easy if you don't introspect and if you keep looking outward, it's easy to get distracted into things that don't matter, which means let's say your competition also offering something which customers really don't need, but it's sort of an add-on feature or a service to their product. And if you start putting energies on, just to sort of horizontally diversify or do things what competition is doing without assessing that your customer needs it, you'll end up putting a lot of money, time, effort, energy into things that don't matter. After the USP, actually the focus should be on what we call as growth avenue or growth potential, where there is an area where you would not still have the capability and you can see that there is a market because a customer and competition exist. And that quadrant, if you're able to address better and bring it closer to your USP, will be the winning mantra for a market, especially in India where we operate. Now, while USP as a concept is important, as I said, it's easier said than done, and a great deal of introspection is required. USP will also take you closer to finding your niche. And this, I mean, every sort of large organization, even if we say the largest organization like Reliance, they might have so many things, but each business in their organization is trying to find a niche. Gone are the days where being jack of all trades was a good thing, and you can see the image that one businessman, there is of course great kick and great desire to do everything, but it is not any longer beneficial or useful if someone has to try to do everything. there will be a market, there will be other players who will come and who will, in the value chain exist and coexist with you. But what you need to do is, once you've sort of thought about and, started to build your USP, which is a continuous process, it's not that you think about it today and you can, it remains stagnant. You start capitalizing on what your strengths are, addressing what your customer needs, fill that gap, as I said. At the same time, for a niche, it can't be something that only you understand and no one else can figure out hai kya ye. So the niche has to be very simple, because you'll also have to articulate and communicate this as part of your strategy, your communication strategy, your marketing and sales strategy, that this is what differentiates me from everyone else out there in my micro market or in my product or in my area, whichever way. So it has to be, when I say simple, I'm not saying that the niche is always a simple business. It's just that it has to be articulated in a simple and understandable way, because this is not what you want, but this is what you want your customers and stakeholders to understand and believe in. The next step on going deeper into your niche is achieving an expert status, because while you might be doing the first two things, until and unless you reach that status, and this is both internalized, that you believe that in a particular area or a domain you are an expert, as well as your market perceives you to be that, only then is that niche sort of happening. Sometimes you might believe that I am the best and I do things better than others, but if the market doesn't perceive you to be the best or to be the most sort of go-to person or business in that niche, it may not be relevant. So investing on that is very, very important. And for all this to sustain, for all this to stay relevant throughout, as I said, this is a process, this is an evaluation. You need to keep building trust. You need to keep ensuring that all the stakeholders related to your business trust in your niche, trust in your strength, and the actions, the decisions that you're taking are also focused on sustainability, because the business will exist even beyond you, beyond your lifetime. And you have to institutionalize it. You have to define the way it should operate, so that it sort of lives beyond whoever is the current driver or the patriarch or the owner of the business. Ashutosh, would you like to add anything on the niche here before I?
Of just inputs to share. I'll just go back to the USP bit once and share an observation which I have often seen with myself, because I also come from a business background and various other entrepreneurs I've interacted with over a period of time, is that to be able to identify the USP of your business, it's actually very important to take a step back from the business and start looking at yourself in the mirror in your house. And as abstract as that may sound, actually be able to look at yourself and identify what are your own strengths and weaknesses. I have often come across people who have been absolutely brilliant when it comes to public relations and marketing. But for the very same people, when it comes to numbers or accounts, it may not have been their forte. On the other hand, I've seen guys who are excellent in finance, who are excellent in strategy, but when it comes to marketing or selling, it may not be the strong point. For myself, I can share with you that finance is something which always interested me. And I discovered that to be a strong point as far as I'm concerned. While marketing and sales was something I was not that strong in. And therefore, I obviously supplemented that by getting team members on board who were stronger there. So the point is that for you to be able to identify the USP of your business, you first need to identify your personal strengths and weaknesses. That's one point. And going along with what Suraj was sharing, the way the USP leads to the niche, if you could move to the next slide. On the niche bit, especially for SMEs, because I myself come from an SME business background, it is a niche which keeps a SME not only alive, but thrive. And I have seen enough and more examples where after the success that the SME gets by being in the niche and getting motivated by that success, when they start dreaming of becoming a bigger player, which is fine, there's no problem with that. Often many SMEs make the mistake of coming out of the niche onto the bigger battlefield where the larger players are fighting with each other without having the necessary weapons. And we'll come to that in the following slides.
Sure. Thanks, Ashutosh, for sharing that. Now we all know we've gone through and we are going through, and people who say that the world will change, I think the world has changed, and we have to now reset the way business was done and everything. India has this classical thing, and again on SMEs, forgive me, but people generally said "Piche dekho, aage badho," which means you always looked for how things were done by someone else or someone thing, and then you sort of incrementally built on it to move ahead. Now there is nothing to look behind because the world has only changed, and it will continue to change and evolve with the kind of uncertainty that this pandemic brought through. Uh, so to be successful, and again, it's a word which is easily said, and that's why I just thought that if you think that hearing to us or looking at someone else and reading books, etc., yeah, all that will help you keep motivated, but success is never that journey which is from point A to point B in a straight upward line. Success in the new world as well as prior was always continuing to pivot, continuing to experiment. There will be ups and downs, there will be various sort of things in that journey where you'll even have to take 2 steps back at time to grow, and then ultimately over a period of time you will find the secret sauce on what for your business is your success, and you have to go through that journey. There is no shortcut, there is no easy money, there is no overnight success that happens. So really you have to accept that there is a change, you have to analyze what it means for you, and you have to adapt to it. These are the 3 A's that every one of us, irrespective of which business, what scale, what thought process, even if you're a professional, I mean, this is true for everyone today in this new world that we are living in. And how do we rescript that while we analyze or we press these 3 A's is that we bring back our creativity. We sort of start thinking from a clean slate, like a child, like a very basic on what we are, what our strengths are. Of course, some new capabilities everyone will have to incrementally or drastically, depending on the nature of business, develop that. And these are great times to build businesses. I know there is a lot of statistics on saying that, in the most toughest of times, today the large organization all started in, the toughest times or in some of the other difficult situations. So what you build now, you have more time. It might sustain more because you will build in a slightly atmosphere where you will want to make it more robust, more adaptable. Also use this time, I mean, because prior to this, everyone was just running, rat race or doing the same thing. Just sort of spare that thought, analyze what everyone else is doing. Knowing that will give you more ideas, more learning, right? In that, don't look at competition knowing from an imitating perspective, but just from a learning perspective, that how people in the industry are doing it. India unfortunately doesn't have, culturally we don't collaborate enough even with competitors, and in the Western world there is competition, and yes, they're fighting out in the market, but at the same time there is a great deal of sharing of learnings and knowledge to collaborate, so that as a sector or as an industry it is win-win for everyone. You will have to do a revised risk reward matrix to see what to invest, what not to invest, where to come out for, which business to stop. Even that's a call you'll have to take, while remaining focused on what can continue to give you the positive returns on your effort and time and investment. Nothing can be achieved alone. I know most people here are from families and businesses or individuals wanting to do it, but without building a team or building your A team, you will not scale, you will not be able to grow. And building that team not just involves professionals, but even within the family, to get the right skill sets developed, to build capabilities. All that has to be thought through and invested in, because that will give the legs to the business to stand up, grow, and run. And also engage with good advisors who will be trusted advisors in your journey as you rescript your business. Ashutosh, would you like to add something here?
I just want to repeat 2 things you said, which are absolutely, I mean, amongst all the very relevant things you have said, there are 2 things which really stand out for me personally from my experiences. पहली चीज है कि you said was that there is no easy money, there is no quick money, and I totally swear by that. And unfortunately, today's day and age, there is this impression that a lot of people have, the young people have more of it. You do a startup today, and within a short period of time, you'll become a billionaire or a millionaire. Well, there is a lot of hidden data which is not in the public domain. I mean, it is there, but often not showcased, which says that the fatality rate is very, very high. So be very careful before you go down that path. I'm not discouraging anyone. All I'm saying is be realistic about it. Rome was not built in a day. SMEs have not been built in a day. So that is one thing. The second thing is the A-team bit you talked about. I think that is extremely important for the success of a business. One person doesn't know everything. I have come across enough and more SME businessmen जो कहते हैं मैंने business चालू किया, मेरे को सब कुछ आता है, आप कौन होते हो मेरे को बताने वाले, which is correct. But there is a lot more to growth which is required, which that gentleman may or may not know. And that is where he needs a stronger team and advisors. The golden line that I always follow for myself is what worked till now will not work in the future, which Suraj was just talking about 2 minutes back. So the team building is extremely important for the success of the organization, the continued success. That's all.
Sure. Thanks so much. It's always useful. So yeah, so we've discussed niche, we've discussed USP, and we've also discussed the importance of doing business in a contemporary modern way. And these times are only going to help us to think through that better. As you build your unique, hard to imitate idea, something that's easy to understand, so on and so forth. A lot of people, and before we go ahead, I just wanted one point, and maybe I thought, people struggle that how can I, because, I am in a product or I'm in a commodity or I'm a franchisee, for example, in this audience. A USP often which people don't realize is a better customer experience itself. You might have the same product, same thing, but how you are giving your customer an experience on while dealing with you, while conducting business with you, and so on and so forth, could actually, in today's time and age with multiple players, also be a USP, and a big USP for encouraging the ecosystem to do business with you. So just, don't think that this only applies to very unique businesses, or I need to have a great technology or a product or a differentiator. It is just how you define your system, process, conduct, and Ashutosh will talk about on the next slide, the vision, the purpose. All of that will, help you determine and make more meaning of what we've just spoken in these last 3 slides. So Ashutosh, I'll just hand this over to you.
Sure. Right. So basically, what I wanted to share with you was on the journey of SME from whatever state, either from an early state or from a later state, and how they can grow further. Now, a couple of things that obviously a lot of us already are aware of who are running SMEs, and for those who are yet to start, who have the aspiration to start one, is on the capital structure bit. Because ultimately every business has started with some capital. And it's very important to get the structure right. Otherwise, even though the business model may be very good, the product or service may be very good, if the capital structure is not right, it has the potential to make sure that the business runs out of money very soon, and that very good product and very good service doesn't sustain. And ultimately the loser will be the entrepreneur. And yahan par one thing that I have and here there are a whole host of financial parameters which should be monitored extremely carefully by the entrepreneur. In many cases they are, in some cases they are not. There is only, I will not go into detail on that because that will take time, but there is one particular financial parameter I will stress upon, which is called free cash flow. Jo ki in simple language we say ki how much money has the business generated after meeting all its expenses and commitments. Some people call that profit. There is a difference between profit and free cash flow. Profit is that money the business has earned. Free cash flow is that money which is left in the business after part of the profit has been reinvested in the business, whether in the form of working capital or whether in the form of some fixed assets. That is free cash flow. And every entrepreneur should have an extremely, extremely strict monitoring of free cash flow, because that is an extra cash that is available to him in the hands. And he should have some method to have a minimum amount always available to him. The other point I quickly wanted to just run through was on the operational efficiency bit, which somewhere in my mind has got a correlation with the niche and the USP which the business has created around itself. Typically, if you look around, what makes SMEs very successful, the fact that the owner is involved on a daily basis for nearly 10 hours a day, the fact that the owner's livelihood, his lifestyle is dependent on the success of the business, the fact that the owner knows most of his employees or all of his employees on a first name basis and has a personal relationship with many of them, the fact that the owner gives very personalized service to the customer, which the customer really appreciates. SMEs usually have small operations compared to large companies, so they are able to also sell small batches to customers, which large companies will never do. And finally, if there is any change in the production order system or market changes, SMEs are quick to respond because the owner can take quick decisions. These are the reasons which really help a SME grow, thrive. The moment SMEs want to become bigger companies, they have to make more, they have to sell more, they have to give more credit to the customer. Now, this requires them to invest more, which means they have to go to the bank and take larger loans than what they had. All this is a very tricky area, which I'm not saying SMEs should not go through, because that is how they will become larger companies. But they need to have a very rational plan and a very strong team to go through this process. This process is like a child growing into an adult. It's called adolescence. And we all know the problems that parents face when their kids enter teenage. It is like that. Everybody doesn't go through it well. A lot of people suffer. So I would just caution all my SME friends to be very careful here. Once they have become adults and then they are thriving and growing further, comes the next issue which often SMEs face, is that of continuity and succession planning. And Suraj, may I invite you here to just chip in with what your views are on this angle?
Sure. So business, as I said again, takes a lot of energy of people, takes a lot of time, and while energies and times on creating value go, a very little time and thought process and energy goes into preserving that and planning for succession. So this is globally also an issue, but in India, it's a larger issue because we have statistics for last 60 to 70 years to say that between the first and the second generation, about 75% of the businesses cease to exist for the reason that they have not planned for succession. And by the third generation, less than 3% is the survival rate for family owned businesses. And the statistics alone speaks tons about, why this neglect or why the procrastination, or again, to an extent, why it is still sort of a taboo to discuss succession, to discuss role of children, rights, to discuss who has entitlements, what will be the reward and all. As families grow, things become complicated. But if it's true, I mean, human beings will be human beings and families will be families. But the Western world has adapted to this better, and they plan for succession along with the journey on value creation. And that leads to a successful business which has greater legacy for the business as well as for the family. And that also helps that whenever you want to exit, I mean, if your internal family institutionalization has happened well, you might be able to plan your exit also better, because the whole family will be aligned that this is the best thing for the family to do. I'll just move this conversation on to the next theme. So we've spoken about building business and the short-term, long-term strategy, the USP, the niche. Now we are just saying you've built it, you have something. Please just spend some time to preserve what you have, preserve what you valued, because it's taken so much effort to create it. And if you want it to have a timeless future, you need to preserve it. Now, this thing will not happen, get taken care of by itself. You have to think about it, indulge with families, engage with advisors who will help you to define a roadmap on how do you preserve wealth, how do you build a legacy, how do you professionalize, institutionalize your process, and plan succession on leadership and capability. No amount of money, no amount of success can help you bring family harmony, which is fundamental, for you to have even peace of mind whether to exit and grow. And this will necessarily take you to one of the two things. If you want to continue the business across generations, you have to focus on succession planning. And if you want to, as a family, you've taken a call that I need to now uh, focus on exit. Sorry, is the slide visible?
Yeah, it is. It is.
All right. Maybe I have a small outage. Yeah. So if you need to exit,
You have to go back to that slide.
yeah, you need to plan on an exit. I'm so sorry for this small power outage issue. Yes. So these are the two themes. And Ashutosh, why don't you talk about exit planning, because succession will help a business to just
Continue.
exist, whereas businesses also at times, families also need at times need to value and plan for an exit. So I hand it over back to you.
So just before I get into exit, just a quick observation on succession is that succession of a business in a family, many families, it's very common. A lot of people who create businesses often say कि ये तो मैंने अपने बेटे के लिए किया है, उसके future के लिए किया है. I just want to quickly bounce off a thought that while this is a thought of the father, and for whatever reason, rightfully so, but please do take a minute, pause, and ask your son whether this is what he wants or this is what his aspirations are from a succession perspective. Now, coming into the exit planning perspective, exit as a word is not a very exciting word when you talk about it in India for sure, because it's not looked at favorably. It's not felt as a favorable thing to do. That, I started a business and now I have to exit it. I want it to remain in my family because I started it. In the West, exit is very well accepted as a sensible thing to do if there is no one to run the business, because that is the way you capture the value you have created by investing a large part of your life in it. And there is a full industry around exit planning, which exists in the US, Europe, and other developed countries. Now, when is the right time that you realize you need to exit the business? And the typical signs which are listed out here is when obviously you have nobody to run it. How long will you continue running the business? After all, everybody's age goes up with time. The other reason which often happens with a lot of people is when they are exhausting their individual energy. So while they may or may not be very old, but for some reason, they feel exhausted, they feel they've done enough in life and now they want to take it easy. Or there is sometimes a change in the personal situation of a person. Maybe his health has unfortunately deteriorated, or he needs to relocate for some reason. Or many a times, some people with time, with age, have other interests which take over. That is the time a person should start thinking seriously about planning an exit. Can we move to the next slide? Next slide, please. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
But exit is easier said than done in the case of a SME. In the case of a large enterprise, it is not that difficult because they have a lot of the factors which SMEs don't have, and which we will just look at in the coming slides. So exit by itself is a process. It requires time and it requires commitment on part of the promoter or the owner for sure. And if he's engaging a consultant to advise him on the exit planning process, then obviously on part of the consultant also. But what is that process? Process is broadly consisting of 4 logical steps. The first step is a diagnosis of the current state of the business. Iska matlab कि whatever be the current situation of the business, size-wise, profit-wise, will that business be such that it will be attractive to a potential acquirer? Is it exitable in very simple language? And if it is exitable after the diagnosis, then deciding on the exit goal and the strategy to achieve the goal. Now, what is exit goal? When you talk to a promoter who has decided on exiting a business, and let's say his business is exitable, he will obviously have some aspiration in his mind that he has put in 20 years or 30 years of his life. He wants a certain X amount of money for that business. But is that X amount right? Should it not be X plus Y, or should it be X minus Y? Ultimately, the market will decide. But there are certain logical parameters which help deciding on the practicality of that X aspirational value which he has, which is the responsibility of the consultant to guide the promoter on. And once they have come broadly to a range which is acceptable to the promoter, then a strategy has to be decided upon on how to achieve that. The third and fourth are very logical and self-explanatory, which is that the strategy has to be executed, which is primarily the responsibility of the promoter because he's running the business. Of course, the consultant will always be there to guide him. And finally, strategizing the sale, which is a tricky bit to that extent, because by the time will come to exit the business, the external situation may or may not have changed and things would have to be somewhat tweaked. And next slide. The typical challenges that are there in an exit, and these are all related to SMEs, by the way, are the size of operations. We all know SMEs are small. So small companies are usually not in demand by larger players because it doesn't add significantly to their operations unless and until that company is in a very niche product or service and is strong there, which we have discussed in the earlier slides. The other aspects are nature of the business, again, where in most SMEs, the strategic differentiators are missing. People are typically making Me Too products and competing on price. So again, we go back to the earlier slides that if a business is able to create a strong niche for itself, that will be a strategic differentiator for it. The third reason is extremely common and is man-made by the owner of the SME. He does not maintain his records and finances in a transparent way for reasons we all know. And that often acts against him when it comes to sale of the business. Technology is also less in use. Governance and management is missing because all decisions are concentrated around the owner or few of his people. So there is no professionalization. These are the typical reasons which make it very difficult to sell a SME business, and therefore exit planning is required. Exit planning by definition is the process of preparing your business to convert its value into cash, the value which is on paper into hard cash. And finally, the last line, which is extremely important, and our message to our viewers is that monetization and unlocking value needs as much attention as creating value. What you have created over 20 years should come in your hands, should not disappear. To do that, succession and exit planning can help to achieve the family goals in a systematic and logical manner.
So thank you so much, Ashutosh, for articulating that wonderfully. In interest of time, we are not going to talk about succession. I mean, there are ways of doing it in terms of de minimis wills and trust and other things. But let's just open this up to Q&A and let's be mindful of time. So Sonali, over to you again on how would you like to start the Q&A part?
Thank you so much, Mr. Ashutosh and Mr. Suraj. Thank you for a wonderful session and for sharing your unique insights. And if I may just say, it was a wonderfully coordinated session as well, without even needing a moderator. So that was, it was absolutely a pleasure having both of you here. And also to all our attendees at the FRO Virtual Summit, I'm sure we will be able to add some value to their lives through this session. So thank you once again for all of that. In terms of Q&A, since I'm not able to access the live questions from the attendees as of now, I was just trying to view that, but I was not able to do so. So I would just like both of you to share an end note for all our SME business owners, for someone who is facing a loss in their business, they are wanting to take an exit. Any last thing you would like to tell them to just go for it and not just be married into a business?
Ashutosh, why don't you take a shot at it? Yeah.
So it's very easy, and it often happens that the person who starts the business or inherits wants to continue with it, often for emotional reasons or reasons of pride. But the way I look at it, coming from a business family, and I am not first generation, I inherited, is that when it comes to money matters, pride has no place and emotions have no place. It has to be well thought through, logically thought through, and calculation based. That is how I would approach any topic which is to do with money matter. So I would not approach it emotionally. That is the only suggestion or request I have to all my SME friends out there. Nothing more than that.
Absolutely. Mr. Suraj, if you would like to add something to that.
I would only say that people should collaborate more, communicate more, operating and getting, the busy life that it was where you just picked up your bag and went to office and only spoke to your vendors and suppliers. I think there is a larger world out there, and the more you are part of it, the more you give to it, the more you will learn and the more you will stay relevant. So collaboration with your competitors is sort of the theme that I keep encouraging SMEs in a healthy way for mutual benefits. Is the thing. And yeah, like I say, succession, because you need to plan for it, and people in India don't have even basic wills. Forget to mention trusts and other things that are important for businesses. All that, because so much time everyone is spending with family now. This is the time that you could talk about it and even get that awkwardness or that sensitive part of the family balance out of the window, and it will give more conviction for the family to support whoever is driving the business, because there will be clarity and they'll all feel stable and relaxed about what is happening and how decisions are being taken, how governance is there. So some amount of attention internally, but a lot of that on the collaboration with the external world.
Absolutely, and wonderfully.
Organizations like Franchise India can add great value. I mean, given that you deal with so many, I mean, you're almost like a powerhouse of knowledge.
Absolutely, and wonderfully said, both of you. And what you mentioned is exactly the kind of mindset that we want to encourage between our business owners as well, for them to just get that courage and just be like, okay, yes, I'm going to do it. Either I'm going to, scale up, or if I'm not, getting value in my business, then it's always better to move on to something better.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Mr. Suraj, Mr. Ashutosh. As I said, it was a pleasure having both of you here, and thank you from all our attendees as well, and thank you for your time.